Hi everyone! Today we're going to be talking about the difference between ISTP and ISFP. I started a series quite a while ago with respect to the different MBTI types that can be compared and contrasted. I've made quite a lot of videos on this topic, on combinations such as INTP and ISTP, INFJ and ENFJ, INTJ and INTP, ESFP and ENFP, ENTJ and ENTP, and so on and so forth. You can find all these videos on my channel, and today I'm going to be talking about ISTP versus ISFP. We will be looking at letters, cognitive functions, interaction styles, and communication styles. Okay, so all about that in the next few minutes. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's dive in. So, if we simply look at these two types, ISTP, ISFP, and we have this four-letter code, we will notice that the main difference that strikes out is the third letter, T or F, thinking or feeling. This one is, let's say, the most surface-level difference that we can notice between these two types, namely the difference between their decision-making function or their preferred decision-making function. In the case of ISTP, the decision-making function is introverted thinking, whereas in the case of ISFP, the decision-making function is introverted feeling. However, if we just look at it from a basic level, thinking, feeling, we notice that ISTPs are more likely to prioritize making decisions based on facts, logic, whereas ISFPs are more likely or more biased to prioritize making decisions based on their own personal values. Now, if we are to expand this and actually look at introverted thinking versus introverted feeling, if we are to look at that difference, we might say, well, there's a huge difference between these two types, right? And the answer is yes and no. Yes, because at a deeper level, the functions prioritize very different things and they work quite differently. However, if we are to look at it more from the perspective of what appears to the outside, sometimes they are not that easy to tell apart. Okay? And even Carl Jung, in his original book, Psychological Types, mentioned that these functions that are opposite, like NI and SI, TI and FI, TE and FE, NE and SC, sometimes look more alike than we would think. So, TI and FI, for the ISTP, introverted thinking is a function that creates this internal logical framework. This is why ISTPs tend to be really good at categorical thinking. It's easy for them to classify information based on different logical categories that they establish for themselves, and for them to make decisions accordingly. For the ISFP, on the other hand, because introverted feeling is their dominant function or their hero function, we notice a stronger tendency to prioritize their own personal values and their own feelings when they make decisions. This doesn't mean that the ISFP cannot think logically. And it also doesn't mean that the ISTP does not have personal values or that the ISTP does not care about personal values. It's just a matter of what feels more comfortable to them, what comes more naturally without thinking, without trying. So introverted thinking for ISTP is something that, they go to by default. It's not like they are pressing themselves to say, okay, I'm really trying to understand what makes sense. I have to make this decision objectively or based on logic or based on my internal logical framework of how something works. It's just something that really comes naturally to them. Same for the ISFP with introverted feeling. It's much easier for them to feel what is right in their opinion, what aligns with their own personal values, what feels authentic as a decision, something that is aligned with how they are internally, and they will go and do that, okay? But of course, there are situations when both of these types will also use other elements in their decision-making process. But this is a quite striking difference. I've noticed that a lot of people who have introverted thinking rather than introverted feeling in their first four functions tend to find it much easier to rationalize their values or verbalize their values without necessarily always being really connected to the content, the emotional content of those values. On the other hand, people with introverted feelings sometimes struggle to say, okay, I value I don't know, love or friendship or freedom or whatever, but rather they feel that making a specific decision aligns with those values and what feels right and authentic to them. Because they don't rationalize their values as much as people with introverted thinking do. And I would say this is a pretty striking difference between ISTP and ISFP. Then, if we are to look at the interaction styles, this is Linda Burns' interaction style model, which classifies the types into 4 different categories. ISTP is a chart the course type or a finisher type, whereas ISFP is a behind the scenes type. So this shows us a pretty notable difference, that in communication style, because ISTPs are part of the chart the course or finisher group. They are more likely to have a direct or directive communication style. This means that, for example, when you ask them a question, they're more likely to give you a concise, direct answer to your question, rather than giving you more details or more information that you haven't asked for. They are also more likely to feel more decisive because of the way they use words, kind of like they're directing the energy in a certain way. Not necessarily that they're bossy or anything. They can be or they cannot be, depends on the situation and the person, but more so it feels like the words that they use are kind of like pushing in a certain direction. On the other hand, ISFPs with an informative communication style are more likely to give you more context, more information, more input, more details that perhaps you haven't asked for, because they feel like you need to have the entire picture to understand what they mean. And also they don't have the same feel to their words or the way they speak, because they don't feel like they're necessarily directing energy in a certain way. They're just informing, providing input without having this strong decisive element to it. They sound a little bit more relaxed. Also, similarly, because of this difference in interaction style, ISTPs are more likely to, in a way, set a goal, something that is really important to them, something that they really want to achieve. And similarly to the other people in the group, INTJ, ISTJ, INFJ, they are more likely to consistently work and make sure that they stay on track to achieve that particular goal. They prefer doing it on their own, but if other people join, that's also okay, as long as they feel like they're continuously moving towards the thing that they want to make, accomplish, finish, whatever. On the other hand, ISFPs, being part of the behind the scenes group, they are more likely to say, well, I care more about creating something perfect, creating something that is really well done. And because of that, they might spend more time trying to perfect something, trying to make something, look great, be great, function well. And I've noticed, especially in the workplace, a lot of people from the behind the scenes group, ISFP included, but also ISFJ, INTP, and INFP, they might take a little bit longer at the beginning to produce a result, especially if we look at like corporations and things like that. They might take a little bit longer to have high performance. However, because they spend so much time planting seeds, metaphorically, and perfecting something and understanding something and getting good at something, they are more likely to show exceptional results in the long run. So again, a difference here is that the ISTP is a bit more directive, charting the course towards their goals, their aspirations in the long run, whereas ISFP is more likely to plant the seeds, make something really, really properly, and then wait for it to bloom. It's a more diverse, or I don't know really how to phrase this, but rather something that goes and grows in a way. And then I also mentioned that these two types are quite similar in the sense that they are both artisans. They belong to the same temperament, according to David Kersey. So this is something that they have in common, and they might, find similarities within each other. Now, we might also add that the enneagram type can provide us with some input with respect to the subject, because ISTPs are more likely to be enneagram 5, whereas ISFPs are more likely to be enneagram 4. I would say that this is a pretty good indicator. Like if you're unsure between the types, if you're an Enneagram 5, you're much more likely to be an ISTP, whereas if you're an Enneagram 4, you're much more likely to be an ISFP. However, Enneagram 9, for instance, is very common among both types. Enneagram 6 can also happen for both of these types. Anyway, so these were my thoughts on some of the broad and most important differences between these two types. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful and clarifying. And as always, thank you for watching. Thank you for being with me, and see you next time with another video on typology.